What's up? Hey, man. All right. Good. Hey. That's cool. I like it.
Figured more people could get in the
Yeah, that's super cool.
shop.
Sorry to email you late at night about Salesforce.
Oh no, that's the beauty of email. It's not annoying because if I'm on it, I'm on it.
Yeah.
If I'm not, I won't know. I think consecutive text messages may be.
Yeah, it's like a story. That should require bleeding or some sort of physical pain.
The invites are all out and we're live. Oh yeah, one viewer. No participant. Yeah.
I can, are you cool if I participate? I can't chat with anyone, right?
No, to do that, we would have to. I could invite.
We can just chat in the Google. That's easier,
I
right?
could chat in a Google Doc, or I could invite you, but that would give away a spot from one of the 9.
You can chat, right?
I could chat. I could post links and.
Everybody, can I give you a bit later drop in there whenever you're ready?
Yep. All right.
bit.ly/1 lowercase, all letters are, well, sorry, lowercase I, lowercase a, number 8, default G Gary, capital F Frank.
Is that it? You can see it?
Is that an I after the 1?
That's an L. An L.
Yeah.
Lowercase L.
Lowercase I.
Okay, fine. IA8. Cool. And what's this the link to?
You can tell that's the virtual.
There you go. I'll just test it really quick. Sweet. She said, Jess.
Not open that door to save myself. Good morning,
Hello.
everybody.
Good morning.
Dr. Handler, I was just commenting to Cam how much I enjoy watching your professor persona come to life every Wednesday.
I can get used to that.
I could get into it too.
Oh my goodness.
It's great.
You know what an actual Professor Cam would look like, you would not want to have.
feel like I'm breaking the blog rules, but it's technically not a blog, I don't think.
What?
The New York Times Magazine. It has a website.
That totally counts.
Okay, good, I'm glad. I love it. Everybody remember to send me a lunch order too. Tony said
I'm having a
are
weird.
good.
Can I just get whatever you get?
You want whatever I get.
I trust you.
Because you know that I'm really good at ordering avocado.
You live at a different level when it comes to
I know. I agree.
Just see like
It's like
avocado.
Right, let's go in the sushi restaurant and not order in the chef's choice. What you order what, Katie? That's City Green.
Extra Brussels sprouts, extra avocado.
Did y'all see the boxes here?
Yep.
Oh,
The
salad
salad
boxes here.
delivered back.
The fridge. Happening.
I'm so excited.
Did you hear about that? That fridge outside is salads that you just buy with your credit card.
And like wraps and stuff.
2014.
Matt, how disruptive would it be if I wasn't here for like the full class?
No. Well, we're live, but you can.
Alright, well.
Let me try
I'm recording too.
It would be terrible. We would all cry, but we would get on. We would go on without you.
Alright, well, in that case.
You feel free to do whatever you need.
Okay.
Totally. Today is kind of overwhelming. Anybody trying to get real work done today, beyond coordinating and planning with their colleagues, amazing work, which is a great thing. No, yeah. Just, you can do whatever you want to do. Today especially, like,
I'm recording on my computer.
you know,
In there, though.
Cam, you can bail totally. If you want to send me your link of your favorite blog, I'll share that
Okay.
on your behalf.
Well, maybe I'll start and then see where. Started, see how I'm doing.
That's why, for instance, the coffee house usually claims the creation spawns such engines. They created a space where ideas and people spawn. When you look at problems of innovation from this perspective, it sheds a lot of important light on the debate we've been having recently about what the internet is doing to our brain. Are we getting overwhelmed with always connected multitasking lifestyle? Is that going to lead to less sophisticated thoughts, big, slower, deeper, have a new state of reading? Right? Obviously, I'm a big fan of reading, but I think it's important to remember that the great driver of scientific innovation.
Welcome. This service is provided by freeconferencecall.com. Please access
Our ability to reach out and exchange ideas, and borrow other people's functions.
you enter 8, 6, 2, 9, 6,
That really has a big impact
correct.
on everything else.
To re-enter your access code, type 2. Please enter your access code
So
by
yes,
the pound
so
sign.
we're more attractive. What has happened is you can interact with us
You enter 8,
smartly.
6, 2, 9,
So
6,
many new ways
7.
to
This
get
is correct. Press 1. You're on free. Participate in this conference. Please announce yourself.
serendipitous across the
I'm recording that.
Should we do a check on the phone if everybody got the
Yeah.
invite?
Well, I think we only have 3 people on.
Morning, hey Christine.
What's up? If you're on the call, which I think is 3 or 4 folks, can you let me know if you've got the link to the Google Hangout? Fabulous. Cool. Thanks.
Did or does?
Did.
Can you turn it up a little bit? And quick thing about the court, will you send me the virtual court and I can pop it in Basecamp or?
It should be in Basecamp.
Oh, it's the same one as we always use.
Always.
Oh.
It's also in the chat box. I can read it, though.
Here's Vera. When Vera can get in VIPs.
Vera on the phone. Vera!
Vera.
Oh, there they are. All right. Always on pins and needles until people come in.
Wait, why is it doing that?
Your computer.
Is there a number I'm supposed to be calling into?
Vera is talking.
So we need that.
Vera, I'm bored for being the first person that's
Still mic somewhere. You're still around.
I just disabled mine.
Thank you. His mic's.
They're live in living color.
Welcome. This service is provided by freeconferencecall.com. Please. You entered 8629667. If this is correct, press 1. There are 8 participants in this conference. Please announce yourself.
$7 if you want.
Okay.
That helps. Cut. Maybe I'll get one.
My sunglasses, are they still in the party?
Oh, yeah.
You should have gotten a Google Hangout invite.
They're in the middle.
I sent it to Molly11@gmail.com. I can reset it. Came from info@4.org.
What did you say? Yeah.
What do you need?
I can resend.
All right, guys. Thanks for being patient. We're working our way in. While we're getting started, if you wouldn't mind, make sure that you check the chat so you can see. First of all, the chat. Impressive.
Yay!
And second, the virtual board link is up and available for you. While we're getting our test up and running, you could open the core board, figure out which mini group you're in, and go into your mini group Google Doc and paste the link to your favorite blog. Or Trashy Magazine, if that's what you read. That's fine. Someone asked that question earlier. I clarified. It wasn't a Trashy Magazine. But
No, I was gonna say,
I just thought in case someone
okay.
else had a Trashy Magazine, I would give them permission for that. So drop your link in just into your mini group Google Doc. so that we can get a little bit of a head start when we get to that part.
Bit.ly 1GF or 1?
That is bit.ly / 1
Lowercase I, lowercase a, 8, EG, capital F.
For some reason, I can't get into the meeting group.
Which group are you in?
Group D.
Share field with that.
Matt, we're still looking for the court board. I'm not finding it.
It should be, it's in the email that I sent you, and then it's also in the Google chat, at the very top of the Google chat. Can you paste it in again?
Yeah.
Tony's pasting it into the chat again.
It's also in Basecamp.
Okay. Group E.
Group L.
Alright, I'm changing this now. So, John, what's up? Good to see you.
Tony, did you send my text to send an invite to Melissa?
I did. I sent it to Miss Melissa at Gmail.
Okay, yes, that's correct. I just haven't.
I can resend it.
Yeah, go ahead and try and resend it.
All right, how we doing? Who do we have left?
Melissa Halpern, waiting for her to join.
All right, she's working.
I also invited Boris. Haven't seen him yet.
Okay.
Who's outside? Somewhere lovely. Is that Molly?
Yeah.
Molly, where are you?
I created a candy fest on my porch, so that's where I've been working last week or so.
Oh my gosh, that's so
Okay. So that's a good idea. I'm jealous of the tan you're getting and the view you have right now. That's fantastic. Sorry, Matt, I cannot work here.
We can start a stand. We can have a standing desk outside in New Orleans.
You know what we
Did you
don't?
say standing desk or tanning desk?
I think she said tanning desk.
Oh.
It was, I basically took a coffee table and put it on my outdoor furniture and added boxes for my keyboard. So it's a little big shift, but it works.
I would like very much for you to take a picture of that and send it to the chat box if you can figure it out. If you probably can't do that while you're online.
Your maker thing of the day.
Now we're talking.
Something that's a little secret at 4.0 once you're here in July, if the weather is not extremely hot, is there's this like secret rooftop porch on, what floor is that? The fifth? The fifth floor?
Oh, no, the fourth.
The fourth floor. So
You get real hot real
during,
fast.
yeah, you do. But if it's like evening or something, that could be good.
I thought you were going to talk about the W rooftop
Oh, pool.
pool/club.
No, it's not really my jam.
No.
But we will. There's a serious summer dance party on Sundays at the W Hotel in New Orleans during the summertime. So we will put that information on Basecamp so you know where to go if that's your thing.
More importantly, you know that everyone needs to know that Cam is the resident pool crashing expert. She knows where all the
I do love
pools are
snaps for that.
and how to get in them.
Going to free pools.
All right, let's get rolling. I think we're waiting on Boris. John Fraboni is deep in the bowels of some government office trying to become a citizen. He's a Canadian citizen now, so he's going to be joining us after that. One of the many meetings he has about his paperwork. So wish him luck. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Let's get rolling. As you saw in the update, today's really a little bit of a breather from the topic of the history of education, and the hope is that I'll give you a little more time between now and the first session in July to get your reading done, just to cover expectations for that. It's been so fun to hear people from all over the country. And actually, I just got an email from someone in the UK who said, "What are your favorite books on the history of education in the United Kingdom?" And I did not know a single book. So
Maybe John can tell us.
I hope this doesn't go too viral, but it's exciting that so many people want to participate. So as I did with the reading list, I am totally advocating that responsibility and putting it on you guys. And asking you to do these one-page summaries. And Tony and I have been riffing on cool ways to package that, and we think that we'll actually publish that in some form for the tons of people that have said, hey, can we be part of this discussion? So I'm super psyched about that, and just encourage y'all to put some effort into that one-pager. I will I'll have silly awards for the best clarity and summary in your one-pager, and I'll also provide silly awards for the best doodling, the best hand doodling on your one-page summary. So you've now been warned/challenged about that. So all right, let's jump back into our agenda. Before I get rolling, let me just open up the floor and ask if anybody's got any. Dude, my life's kind of a mess right now. I need some help on tech, or I need some help on basic logistics, or I have a burning question for 4.0.
I don't have a house in New Orleans
Yeah,
yet.
like
Anything
where
like
am I
that.
going to live, etc. Just want to open the floor for that so that we can address those and flag them and start working on them. Is everybody doing okay on that front? I'll open the floor. Okay, cool. All right, so everybody unmute your mics and get ready to shout out a number between 1 and 17. 17 meaning that you're just doing unbelievably well today. You're just awesome. 1 meaning it's actually a cardboard cutout of you and you're still in bed asleep, okay? And I'll count to 3, and then after I say 3, yell out your number as loud as you possibly can. 1, 2, 3.
14.
16!
Cool. I didn't hear any like 1, 2s, or 3s. Did anybody else?
An 8, I think, somewhere.
An 8? All right. So Katie heard an 8. Who was an 8? I think it was an 8. Oh, hi. All right, 8. Who's an 8? Joe?
I think it's Boo.
Oh, wow. Sorry. Okay. Sorry to misunderstand you. Who was the 8?
That's me. Boo. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Fu, go for it. How are you doing? Tell me about your 8,
Well,
if you're willing.
so, yeah, mostly it's driven by the fact that I got bitten by like some fire ants, but it was twice its normal size, so I I'm not really mobile, and I'm just trying to stay off my feet as much as I can the last few days, so that's like 90% of it right now.
Fu, that's terrible. Are these New York fire ants or Georgia fire ants?
Either Georgia fire
It's the worst kind. Yeah.
That's serious. For anyone who's been bitten by a Georgia fire ant, yeah, I feel your pain. I apologize. I got bitten by like 2 last week. I can't imagine a footful. Okay, So everybody think good thoughts about foods. If you have spare calamine lotion, put it in a box and ship it to Foo. And let's get started. So I said it before, Vera, I don't know what's going on, but you have once again defied your own low expectations that you set for yourself or us or something. First one into the chat, pretty impressive. Everybody can open the Google chat window and you can actually just see that Vera's name is up there, first person on chat. Pretty impressive.
I'm so excited about that.
Just-
So excited.
I just wanted to affirm you
Can
on
you
that.
make sure? Can you make sure to tell Katie?
I'm here, Vera. I'm here.
I think Katie was the first person who noticed
I
it.
noticed it. Don't worry.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you, Katie.
that's right. And for all of us that are over 30, we are working on the fax machine plugin so that you can contribute to Google Hangout via fax, but we have not worked out the kinks
It's
yet.
like an April Fool's Day Google thing.
Totally, yeah.
That's
Now-
not just Katie in this particular situation.
no, I mean, you and I are, yeah, I don't know,
There's a
no.
couple other people.
There's a few people
Yeah.
over 30.
You got some.
Right? Now, being polite, some of us could use a different number than 30, but we won't go there right now. Moving on. All right, so Steven Johnson. I got to meet Steven Johnson. I kind of creeped him out and brought him an orange headband in the middle of a conference right before he was speaking. But I love this guy's work, and I don't know if you've read any of his books, but just to set context, the reason why I like Steven Johnson's writing is because he really he's a pretty thorough researcher. His first big book was called The Ghost Map, and it talked about he really considers himself an anthropologist. He's not a PhD, but he writes as if he was trying to uncover the reasons why things happen. You know, not unlike Malcolm Gladwell when he wrote Tipping Point, but I think Johnson does this at a much deeper level. I think the topics are more interesting. And Ghost Map was about how they figured out the Black Plague was being spread through the sewer system. And that seems like an obvious point today to us, but it was very much about ghosts and spirits and a lack of uncertainty about how disease actually spread at the time. And from that, he kind of created this reputation for looking into sociological phenomenon and understanding how it happens. And so this particular book that we sent all of y'all called Where Good Ideas Come From was a pretty significant book for us in the first year of 4.0 because it helped us establish a baseline of thinking around what we wanted 4.0 to be. And it hit a nerve with me as an educator because I didn't feel like anyone had ever talked about the concept of sharing ideas. And it kind of hit that nerve for me that I felt like I had been in a box, a literal box as a classroom teacher, but a metaphorical black box that wasn't connected to any other teacher's boxes. And so just personally, this book spoke to me because it really, for the first time, helped me realize, oh, you can create cultures where you share your ideas, where you become better, not just because you're working with someone who's good at something and that skill helps you do your work, but the quality of your ideas gets better because you're sharing imperfect versions of your own and they're bouncing off other people's imperfect versions of their own. And that obviously requires trust and a willingness to get over that fear of sharing your ideas. But I really like this book, and it keeps coming back to us, which is why we added it to the list. And the link that you sent, that RSA Animate, knocks most out of the big stuff out. There are a couple of ideas that I'll add into it that aren't in the 4-minute video. But let me just open the floor and hear from a few folks that want to share it. What struck you about Where Good Ideas Come From and why?
Well, this is Vera. I'll start. I actually started reading the book after I looked at the video link. And what struck me the
most was sort of the 10-10 rule or the 10-10 theory. It takes 10 years for that idea to really develop, and then it takes another 10 for people to sort of catch on to the fact that it's a good idea and want to make use of it. And for me, it was personally resonated because I just remember so many years ago having an idea that I thought was a really, really good idea, and now knowing almost 10 years later that it's a horrible idea. And probably it will be another 10 years before anybody thinks that the idea that I have now is really good. So that really kind of struck me in the reading, in addition to just watching the video. I thought that that was an interesting sort of explanation of how things really do develop if they're going to develop into people's ideas.
Oh, that's awesome. Anybody else? And props to Molly. Share in the chat room, or if you want to speak. Use as many different vehicles if you want to get your point across. Scribble it on a sticky note and put it up on your webcam if you want. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just wanted to share quickly the couple chapters. One, the adjacent possible chapter, as well as the chapter on serendipity, were two that really kind of struck me from the standpoint of looking back on the course of our journey for the last 4 years of kind of jumping into something entrepreneurial. That element of kind of serendipity and kind of things happening once you kind of remove the barrier of fear and just kind of showing up and doing things and running into people in maybe places where, you know, it really doesn't connect with maybe what we were actually focused on doing, but then the connections that happen because of that and how it kind of leads to other connections and just the unfolding of you know, meeting people and relationships and sharing these ideas. The year 2013 for us was kind of one of these years that, like, you know, we started reading a lot more. He talks about that in the book in terms of, like, I think Bill Gates or other people who like take retreats just to read, to kind of start thinking differently. And I think for 2 years we were pushing some things that were just focused on maybe what hipsters wanted and not necessarily like what our gut was telling us to kind of push towards. So the whole book I thought was a great read in terms of how these things come together. I loved also the kind of second era, the time it takes these things to happen, really was reassuring from the standpoint of just like understanding these things do not necessarily happen so fast and quick. But overall, there was a lot in that book that I thought was really, really good.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. Anybody else? Yeah, come on, Katie.
So my favorite metaphor from the book is this whole like reef concept and the idea that like something will abandon its home and then something else will find it, and that all these ideas get repurposed in different ways. And we first read this book probably 2 years ago, but it resonates again because I think sometimes we're almost like, I sometimes worry that we're overly idealistic, that people will be open enough with their ideas that they'll be willing to like let that colliding and collaborating and repurposing happen without threat of like, oh, somebody's going to take my idea, or I can't share this much, or you know, someone will run off with this. And so that I just like always love that metaphor though, and I think that is a sort of like North Star of like the way I want people to behave. And so much of that is again about like culture and being willing to be vulnerable and like constantly looking for what can be repurposed and added to. I think there's an optimism that comes with that. So anyway, that's my favorite metaphor.
That's awesome. Anybody else?
I was struck by, there was one moment you gave the book where it mentioned kind of the importance of proximity and who you surround yourself by. And they had an environment
I'm so glad you raised that. I'm gonna cold call Fu. And Fu, I want you to just riff on this, because I know that you have struggled with this on 4.0's behalf in New York. Like, for those of you that are in New York, we've struggled with how do we know that that's a need for people in our community, and we don't know, I don't think we have an answer yet for how to do that without a physical space. But Fu, I'd love for you to just share your most recent thoughts on that, and how you frame that struggle, creative ways you attack it, roadblocks you've hit.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So I think in brief, the latest experiment was, we launched a meetup, and I, ran a meetup since February to try to, create that, carve out that kind of space, and we ran it with the expectations once a month. It's roughly the third or fourth week, Tuesday or Wednesday night in the week, and yeah, I mean, it is definitely a struggle, especially in New York. I think you've got two sides. I mean, on the one hand, there are so many different events, and it feels very fragmented, and there are it's hard sometimes to gauge the quality of them, and I think that goes back to your point of how do you surround yourself with these people that you can bounce ideas off of, when you can't really necessarily always gauge that just from the outside without going in person. And then what was I going to say? Oh, and then secondly, I think the use, how people use meetups and a lot of these kinds of events are sort of like you network and you try to find, you find people you do resonate with at these places, and then people usually take those conversations and connections outside of the meetup and outside of these kinds of events. So I'm trying to figure out what's the right environment and the right level of both event and value proposition, and the right method, I think, to make sure to continue to capture that second subset of folks who are working, either perhaps they're working at very similar stage, they're at a similar stage on the problem or the work they're doing, or they are working on a similar problem. So one way I want to try to bring Proline together in the next 6 months are people working on offering pathways to middle and high school students and even college students to really interesting STEAM-related extracurricular activities, which ultimately connect to careers. And there are probably at least 15 or 20 people, you guys on the phone, who are working on that problem that I want to bring together in the next 6 months.
That's awesome, Fu. Thanks. One thing that exchange makes me think about is as Christine is developing a sense of comfort with the terms of design thinking, one of the first things I learned from Scott, who is a 25-year veteran of IDEO, who worked with us in the first 5 or 6 cohorts maybe the first 4 cohorts at 4.0. He said one of the most important things I've learned in 25 years of doing design thinking at IDEO is to remember where you are in the sequence of whether you're flaring or focusing. And in some senses, great communities and great creative groups of people have a sense of situational awareness that they're in a flaring or focusing phase. And you just heard Fu describe one technique is to focus the people around a particular topic, and that can create some intimacy and clarity in this big mass. But Johnson makes the case that flaring out is actually very important. You have to consciously do it. Justin made a case for it with Gates and others who take time to read. Brad Feld blogs about this. He's very disciplined about taking blocks away and flaring out, and even doing a day every quarter, I think, where he just randomly fills up his day with completely random conversations with folks he's never met. So there's all kinds of tricks and techniques to do this on a personal level, and I wanted to take a little bit of time to do that together, and that's why I asked you to bring your non-education blog. Before I do that, I want to just make a couple connections to the longer reading list. Vera, you mentioned this pace of 10 years to understand and see what works. One of the, and I can't remember who on the list, let me ask the group, who's reading, I just can't pull up my list of who's got what, who's reading Howard Gardner? Does anybody remember? It's called Frames of Mind, is the book. It might actually be Boris, but so anyway, Howard Gardner was the author of the 7 Intelligences framework, where in the mid-70s he suggested that there were 7 types of knowledge that we could be geniuses in, and he was, I thought this is a really transformative book for me when I read it in the early 90s, and then he wrote another book called Creating Minds, where he said, I'm going to find an expert in each of these 7 intelligences and compare their lives. For example, Martha Graham, the dancer, was who he considered a genius in physical and kinesthetic learning. And he compared her life and her pattern, her impact on dance and art to Stravinsky, who he considered an expert in music. And he found this really interesting pattern, that each of these geniuses fumble around for 10 years just figuring out what their world was. And then it took them another 10 years to craft and then communicate what their truly game-changing, field-changing breakthrough was. And then they spent another 10 years roughly building on that with other people who they had invited in. And, you know, I read that book in my late 20s, mid-20s, and I was partly frustrated and pissed that it was like, why is it going to take so long to have an impact on my world? I don't even know which world I'm in yet, and I'm going to be 60 before I do anything cool. But it was also somewhat refreshing in saying, you know what, it takes time. Even the great folks who have made massive impacts on their world, they fumble around a lot. And I think that does not get into the narrative that we all hear. And so, you know, I wanted to just make that connection and encourage you, if you see other connections with books that we're reading, try and make them. Okay, so, sorry to rant. Let's break down into our small groups. And before we do that, let me just tell you what we're going to do. We're going to spend, based on your feedback, I made the groups smaller. We've got twice as many, your names in front of your group list. And in a couple minutes, I'll ask you to go into your mini group and paste in the link to your favorite non-education blog. So you're now officially not allowed to talk about education stuff. You just have to talk about the other stuff in your life. The crazier, the more surprising, the better. And because I really believe what Johnson says, that, you know, the great cultures, the Parisian coffee house that accelerated modernism, the Florence of the Medicis, they created an open door policy that kind of gave the benefit of the doubt to crazy ideas. So you never know what kind of wacky ideas that are going to come from Cambria's AnnaWhite.com blog that might tell you something about the app that you're building or the school pop-up that you're running. And Johnson makes a strong case that some of the best breakthroughs over history have been what he refers to as exaptations. They're not adaptation, they're exaptation. And exapting is that art of pulling something out of a place that you would not expect it and applying that in the context where you are now. And the goal of this exercise for the next 15 minutes is to do some exaptation research, is to reach out into the other areas of your life where you're interested and passionate and create some connections so that over time, as we get to know each other even more, A, we know each other a little bit better, and B, there might be a resource there that you never thought might inspire or be the other half of the half hunch that you have rattling around in your head. So, enough prefacing. let's go ahead and jump into your group. Some of you have already done it. A couple of techniques using the tech that I would ask you to think about trying in your small group. In your Google Doc, you've got comments, which you can get to through, you should have a little box that looks like a square bubble, and you can add that to a piece of the document. And then you have a chat box. You can go over to comments on the top right of your doc, and I would encourage your groups to play with both of those. So one example is, I'm looking at group F right now where Cambria and Melissa have dropped theirs in. One thing you can do as a group is to start talking about the first link and do that with comments. Maybe you can just give everybody a couple of minutes to comment on each person's blog. So let me actually propose this structure to everyone now. If you choose to break it, great, but let me just give you some structure. Take 10 minutes as a group, and by yourself, take those 10 minutes, budget them smartly, and read a little bit on each person's blog. There's no more than 2 other people. So that'll give you 5 minutes on average to get to know each person's blog. And then add a comment connected to each person's link with just some thoughts, stuff you liked, stuff you thought was weird, stuff you didn't understand, stuff that you actually ordered on Amazon in those 5 minutes because you thought it was so cool. And then after that, transition to the chat box and spend 2 minutes each talking about together, real time, about each blog. And I will pop into the voice. I will mute here, but I will time you on the voice through the phone, and then we'll see how it goes. But again, based on your feedback, typing into the Google Doc sucked for most people, so we're going to use comments and chat to see if we can't go a little deeper. And we're going to work in smaller groups. Okay, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat box of the Google Hangout. Otherwise, let me pause before we launch if there's any screaming feedback or questions anyone has. Anybody?
Just a quick note, we're
Max,
missing.
the chat box you're talking about is within the mini breakout document.
That's exactly right.
New chat box. Okay.
And to do that, you can click on comments over in the right side. Actually, I'm sorry. There's a little chat box on the top right. You might have to sign in if you're an anonymous dolphin or an anonymous snake-headed rabbit creature. You might have to actually log into Google to get chat feature. And if that's not working, then you can just work through comments, because I'm just realizing some of y'all, if you're logged in anonymously, it's not going to activate chat. Thanks for raising that. Katie, you had a...
I was just going to say, I know we're missing a couple people who had things they had to be at this morning, so if for some reason you find yourself alone in a subgroup, just change groups. Break the system.
Yep. Okay. All right. So so for example, I'm logged in to Google Docs through my Gmail, but then just switched to my sign-in for 4.0, and now I'm in the chat. So you should be able to get into the chat relatively easy just by signing in. All right, that's a great. And any other logistics or observations folks have? Okay, great. So I'm gonna set the timer for 10 minutes, and you've got 10 minutes of leisurely reading of the super creative, interesting outlets that your colleagues have shared with you. And as Katie said, just load balance yourselves if you see that you're by yourself. All right. So timer starts now. 10 minutes.
I mean, it's very informative, so. How do you get to know you, Jonathan?
Just like.
No judgment needed.
Hey, can you see Christina and Matt?
Yeah.
Yeah, I literally just got a call a minute or two ago. They're apparently, could one of you maybe send me the link to, doesn't have to be the Hangout, or just or folder or something, so I can kind of hop in there?
We will do it. It's on its way.
Thank you so much.
You bet, man.
Joe's face.
All right, you've got about 5 minutes left in reading. So use your time wisely, and then when that timer goes off, I'll give you another 5 minutes to talk as a group. Some of you are already doing that, so you can use the time however you want, but 5 more minutes for the reading. Not coming up from you.
No.
I had to go. We lost the video.
We did. Okay. All right, guys, that's our reading session. I'm going to challenge you. I don't think there might be a group that is using chat, but I haven't seen it. So I'm going to challenge everybody to shift their conversation over to the chat box. This is just to stretch ourselves and try a new piece of technology. Some of the conversations are awesome, but I just want to stretch ourselves to try and use the tools in a little bit different way. And if it's uncomfortable for 5 or 6 minutes, great. So again, you reach the chat box by clicking on the bubble to the right of the list of icons in the top right of your dock. If it is grayed out, that means you might need to log in with a different Google account. So I'll set the timer for 5 or 6 minutes. If you got questions on that, grab us in the Google Hangout chat, and we'll try and help you through it on the tech side. So 5 minutes of experimental conversation in the chat window, not the comments, not the doc itself, but the chat window in your Google Docs. See you in 5 minutes.
Connections you're making with the askmed.com/data.
Universal connections.
I thought Jonathan's choices were fitting, says Evan in my chat box.
Okay, trying to use that thing. No, not that one. There you go. But why is it not showing comments? Oh, see, okay, let me repost it because it says you joined the chat, but I posted it for you today. Just you and me.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Joe asked which chat. In the Google Doc.
He's in. Yeah, All right, the conversations are so awesome and sometimes hilarious that I'm reading. So I don't want to cut you off, but I want to give you about a minute to wrap up the conversation you're having and join me back on the virtual court board in 1 minute. I'll set a timer and you'll hear it go off. So see you in 1 minute back on the court board. Okay, all right, so join me back in the court board. And I just want to take 5 minutes and just hear from folks an observation that you had from your group. I was lurking in most of your chats. And so, first of all, I just wanted to say I really appreciate how empathetic you are for each other. I saw some pretty deep conversations happen pretty quickly. It seems like everybody here really cares about the well-being of their colleagues, which I really appreciate. But it would be a shame for some of these highlights not to come out for the rest of the group. So thoughts about something that you did not know and maybe wish you never knew about someone in your mini group? I'll just open the floor.
This isn't like anything specific or interviews about anyone that I didn't know, but it's just, I think it's so funny because I feel like there are so many things in life, and particularly in our businesses, that we think we're alone on, or like, oh, we're going to push this that way, or like this or like that, and it's just things that we have in common. Like, we were just talking about how this idea is, how it's such a great to share them, because you should show other people your imperfections and your vulnerabilities, and rely on them to take you up and run with you, and run with your ideas. But when you do that, that's the only way you really end up getting closer to that perfection and really striving and doing more. And it's like, I think that's something that a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to share my half-baked ideas. But as soon as you do, everyone else is like, feels the exact same way, and it's just more and more to share their ideas.
That's awesome. You know, that reminds me of one. I think one good habit to get in as a community is to share your failures. I don't know, some of you, when you did keep up with us, you might have had Joe or Shuke say at the end of your session, "Thank you, I failed," and then bow to the group. And I think it's important to remember that, you know, even Picasso, it was a volume game. Most of the paintings Picasso painted sucked because he just painted a lot. And one of the ways I remind myself about how bad my ideas can be when I'm by myself is to search in my Gmail for the 2 words deactivation notice. And that's the email I get from Network Solutions on websites that at one time, usually late at night, I reserved because I was convinced that that was the greatest website of all time for a business idea that I had. And I did that right now. First of all, I have 25 of these emails. And second of all, my favorite, like, horrible idea that I should have definitely asked someone about when it was still a half idea was, I actually thought that the name TNT Schools would be a good name for a network of schools. I don't even know what that means anymore. But I actually owned TNTschools.org at one time for a whole year, thinking that like that was going to be the greatest idea. So I encourage you to share your crappy ideas with yourself, and remember that life can be a lot more fun if you just let yourself be imperfect in front of other people. And if Johnson's right, you'll actually be better because your half punch might find its partner instead of wallowing along in its own lonely, bad place. Okay, sorry, I finished the show. Anybody else? Cam, you guys had some juicy conversation going on over here. Give us some highlights or something that surprised you or that you appreciated.
Yeah, we were like on all different ways of thinking, but it was cool to see just like to get to know Jonathan and Melissa a little bit more, and what their kind of habits look like, and I felt like it was fun to just kind of see where we were all thinking about like that stuff. Now there's a lot of like this and that. So we were just talking about how we all like just without thinking about it, because somebody tells me like this is the 50 best restaurants you have to try in the world. We're like, well, yeah. So we just kind of talked about like what that is doing, kind of as we're thinking about hearing ideas and hearing feedback and who we trust, who we think.
I love this conversation. If y'all are willing to cut and paste that in to the Google Hangout chat, so that folks have it, that'd be great. That was a really good conversation. I thought Christine and Monique were having this very thoughtful conversation about Orlando and New York. Anything y'all want to share from that?
Sure. Monique talked about like Alex's comments and desire to be around people and share ideas. And living in Orlando after having lived in Boston for a while and traveling a lot to bigger cities, I used to be really upset that I was in Orlando. But just like have started to realize that like every city has its own stuff to offer, and then also realize that like it's actually pretty easy to feel alone in really big cities, and that's actually kind of one of the benefits of being in Orlando, is that it's easier to like find a community. It was just kind of interesting and a real time.
That's awesome. All right, I wanted to, I think I'm giving the award for the most diverse collection of links to Vera, Alexandra, and Anthony's. Vera has this gorgeous blog about travel and being a classy tourist, which it seems like so much cheaper to just look at these beautiful pictures and actually going on all these trips. So I'm totally going to do that. Anthony has Deadspin, and Allie has Skill Crush. So I just wanted to ask you guys as a group to talk about what you talked about, highlights, what it was like being in the most sort of spread out, you know, in Johnson's terms, this was probably the widest, the longest adjacent possible frontier, sort of in the width of it. So I would love somebody from that group to just tell us what it was like, or something that you thought was interesting.
that on Allie's site, there was a blog about body language and pitching, your pitching skills and body language that Spark helps at. Pitching is something that I'm working on. So it was interesting to sort of see a blog that was sort of dedicated to talking about how we fix, I think it was either 6 or 7 body language skills to help with your pitching skills. And then Anthony, one of the entries on his site, Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune, which one of these shows makes you feel dumber? And Wheel of Fortune for me, hands down, makes me feel dumber. And I said it because I should for sure know how to spell by now, like, come on. But what was also really interesting about that, those are 2 games that when I was a teacher, I would use all the time to like motivate kids at the beginning of class, and they loved it. And I just thought it was really, really interesting that those were the 2 that sort of popped up in this blog entry. So it was fun to read their blog.
Anthony.
Hey everybody.
Anthony, by the way, Anthony raises his hand, not just in group sessions, but like when we're all talking like at our desks, he raises his hand to talk. So
Yeah.
he just raised his hand. I wanted to affirm him. Yes, Anthony.
Matt. I just want to say that our conversation was very cordial and civil. The blogs that were put up were never blogs that I would go to myself, but I found something interesting on both of them. I think that speaks to what we're all sort of saying, is that when you meet a person or interact with a person, beyond talking about the weather or hi, how are you, or just like the usual pleasantries of the morning, there's always something interesting to find out about people, like no matter who it is. That's been an experience my whole life. But despite the fact that I always realize that when I get to know people better, it's always difficult in the moment to get to that place. And it's sort of, it's something to strive for, to be able to find those little nuggets of who people really are in sort of an authentic way. How do you do that without being creepy right away, or something like that? And this was interesting because this was a little bit of that, and we got there really fast.
Awesome. That's a nice segue. All right, so let's go back to the cork board, and I want to transition into a conversation about building culture as a cohort. So it's interesting, within 4.0, you have this kind of really big community, thousands of people that stay in touch with us on social and newsletters and over the web, and then you have 400 or so people who've actually spent multiple days with us, who've really invested some quality time. And you have this group of less than 100 that you guys are now a part of that have launched ventures or schools through 4.0. And then underneath, even within that, there's a smaller bubble, this giant Venn diagram. You guys are a culture of your own as a cohort. We are a part of, we're like John Fraboni. We have citizenship in Canada and in the US someday. So we're a part of your culture too, this cohort. So I'm going to ask Tony to track these ideas in chat, and if anybody else sees one that here's one come out that they don't see Tony grab, I'll ask you to drop it in Google Chat too. But I want to ask you to just spend 3 minutes with me flaring about ideas that we can use to improve the quality of our culture as a cohort when we're together in July. You can also propose ideas between now and the next 2 weeks, but it can be super simple ideas, like like logistically, like I need to have an easy way to get to everybody's text or phone number so that I can reach out if I'm like stuck on some corner and don't know where to go. Or it can be, let's get together and go bowling, or let's, I want to know where the best food is. Whatever it is, or you have some other crazy idea, or a list of 20 great ideas that you read on a blog that must be the best ideas because someone said that there are 20 of them. Whatever it is, I just want to flare for 3 minutes. Crazy ideas will get bonus points. I will give you 3 magic coffee mug bonus points, which serve no good whatsoever to you in your life. They just represent that I gave you a prize. The craziest idea will get 3 bonus points. Okay, so just to get warmed up, I want to see how quickly we can do this. You have 5 seconds to answer the following question in the Google chat. Just type the name of the show and hit enter.
We cannot everybody's in there.
Oh, not everybody's in chat. So here's what I'm going to do. Scroll down. So let's just go. Everybody go to the top
You want to just do it in this chat?
chat of the Google virtual corkboard. So everybody should be able to get into the virtual corkboard chat. It's open. So let's do it in there. Most everyone's in there. So 30 seconds. Which show makes you feel dumber? Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune? Start typing go.
Never typed what I thought he was saying. Jeopardy.
Oh, yes.
Awesome. Anthony, Alex Trebek, Berglund, clarifying the name of the show is actually Jeopardy! Exclamation point. Thanks for that detail. Okay, if you see the little grayed out arrow that's pointing to the upper right in the tiny little chat box, click that, it'll pull the chat box up, and it's a lot bigger, a lot easier for you to see. Okay, so in this box, somebody help Vera with spell checker so she can spell words like fortune faster. Awesome. So just 3 minutes of everybody flaring ideas that you've either tried in your life that you think are good ways to build community, or things that you're curious about, and be as specific as you can. But let's just flare in this chat box for the next, let's do 4 minutes. I'll set the timer.